when we look, when I was reading about people with disabilities, and I was reading about their everyday struggle to just get the basics, I was really struck by how much they have to rely on charity. We know that this is an issue in our province, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. When the ministers tabled the poverty reduction strategy with the Macdonald government, they wrote this op-ed in the Chronicle, and when they did interviews, they talked about this maritime compassion and generosity and how they were going to harness it as part of the poverty reduction strategy. And we hear a lot about self-sufficiency, and what we're seeing really is a shifting of responsibility from the government onto individuals and communities for truly basic needs. And while we could have said at one point that the government is only about providing basic needs, they're not even about providing basic needs at this point. When you don't have access to something that allows you to even get out of your house, those are not basic needs being met. When you don't have enough money to pay for food and for shelter, those are not basic needs that are being met. Of course, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be proud of our compassion and generosity and the resilience that is in our communities. I just sometimes think it allows governments to not take that responsibility back, and it allows the status quo to remain unchallenged. What we really need to be looking at is the fact that allowing market-driven economic processes and the current policy context of a smaller government. What did we hear yesterday as I was writing this up, my final notes? Premier Dexter telling us that, wait for it, the next budget. What was it he said? It's going to hurt. It's tough decisions. We've been hearing about tough decisions for a long time from all of our governments. This will be the first NDP budget in this province, and it's already set itself up and really to balance the budget. It's not clear to any economists, I don't think, about how that's going to be possible. Certainly not without cuts. So we're waiting in anticipation to see what this government is going to come up with, but our expectations are low, and that's probably what they're hoping for. But that's really disappointing. I still think we have an opportunity here with an NDP government. There is perhaps a basic understanding of social and economic justice. I know there are members of that caucus who understand that, but they seem to have backed themselves into a corner and will just perpetuate the kind of approach that we've seen taken by previous governments. I wanted to end by talking about just a little bit, because I'm sure I'm over, about the fact that we can achieve a balance. Yes, I did quote the Weaving Threads report, which is the social prosperity framework in the province. So there is one, and it is supposed to balance economic prosperity and environmental sustainability, and we can try and hold the government accountable for that kind of balancing act. But with a balanced budget being the only thing they're trying to keep in balance, it'll be hard to do that. Combating poverty, deprivation, and exclusion is not a matter of charity, and it does not depend on how rich a country is. Poverty eradication is an achievable goal, and that's a quote from Louise Arbour. And I just wanted to end with some of the work that we are doing, which I think is critical, because what we really need, and I think this is what Naomi Klein says, which comes from Friedman, which is it's those ideas that are lying out there when we are in this kind of crisis that are picked up. And if we don't keep putting these ideas out there, and I'm talking about the kind of ideas that we had at CCPA, for example, in our alternative budget. So we talk about the fact that we could afford free college education in this province. 18 million would pay for college education in this province. We spent 18 million to retrofit the Blue Nose 2 this year. We need to be pausing and thinking about the priorities in our province and thinking about that very concretely, and that's what we try to do with our alternative budget. And I think that's what CCPA does with all of its publications. It's to make us stop and think, but also to propose real alternatives that are out there. Looking at a stark number like since 1996, Canada has shrunk their revenue, so all governments across Canada, not just federal, by $250 billion. What could we have done with $250 billion in this country? That's a huge amount of money. And I was just reading something that Lars Osberg wrote, and he pointed out that the total poverty gap in Canada is approximately equal to the revenue that we forego every year because of the 2% cut in HST and GST, which most people wouldn't even have noticed. So I guess for me, it's about thinking what our priorities are, but also thinking about who pays, who benefits, where are the costs. Again, I read that Atlantic Canada has 11,000 millionaires. I had no idea that we had 11,000 millionaires, and that we have our share of billionaires. I think there's like a half a dozen or so, but 11,000 millionaires. Wow. We shouldn't just be talking about absolute poverty, is my point. We need to be talking about redistribution. We need to be talking about narrowing that gap. We also had in our alternative budget proposed a surtax on the top earners because of what we know about what's been happening for the last 30 years, 40, however long, where they've been benefiting from tax cuts and others have been paying an increasing amount of their income, whether that's in income tax or user fees or the other ways that governments have to raise revenue. And we need to always be thinking about how to link that. And I haven't talked much about environmental sustainability, but we need, when we're talking about social and economic justice and thinking about those policies, to be linking it to environmental sustainability. And we do have some panelists who will talk to us tomorrow about environmental politics. So I think I will end there and say I'm really looking forward to continuing this dialogue, and I hope that the ideas that get out there kind of this weekend are those that we at CCPA and you all can help circulate, so that those are the ones that are lying around when our NDP government is looking for some inspiring ideas.